Hi everybody. Today we are going to be drawing and creating a slice of cake in the style of the artist Wayne Thiebaud. Now Wayne Thiebaud this year I believe is turning 99, and I love his paintings. He does these beautiful paintings of desserts and sweets. So we are going to start our cake by drawing with a pencil, and you notice on this one I am drawing with a pencil as well because we're going to sketch out our idea first, then we are going to go back in and trace over it. So I want you to notice right now I'm making a parallelogram, so it's not a rectangle because it's slanting up. Okay, and I know it's a little bit hard to see, but stick with me and you'll see why I want to make sure that I have it drawn in pencil first, because I'm going to be erasing my pencil lines after. Next, what I'm going to add is a line coming up like that. So this right here is the side of the cake closest to us. This is the part that's going away, and then I add just barely a curve, and that would be the edge of the cake. So now I have what kind of looks like a wedge of cheese. What we are going to do next is we need to think about adding in all of those beautiful details to our cake to make it look more like a cake and less like a wedge of cheese. So I like to start by adding in the icing, because frankly that's the good stuff. So I'm going to make a stripe, and I'm not going to make it nice and neat and even. I am going to make it kind of crumbly. So I'm adding one line, then a little bit above that I'm going to add another line. So now what I have is this is cake, this is icing or whatever kind of filling, and this is cake. Then what else I'm going to do is we're going to make an edge of cake all the way around. And this we're going to make it come down into the cake shape. And then it's going to turn and come down the side of our cake, come out, up, and again we're going to make it come kind of around. So that original line is a guideline. And then I add another wiggly line coming across to show some dimension. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace over the lines that I want to keep. So you want to watch this part carefully. I'm going to trace over them with a Sharpie, and I'm going to talk about how I'm figuring out which ones I want to keep. I know that I want the outside edge of the cake, so I am going to make it, again, instead of just a nice straight line, I'm going to make it have a texture and look a little bit bumpy. This is where the icing would be, and again, still a little bit bumpy as I come down, because cake does have a bit of a texture to it. And one of the things that Wayne Thiebaud would do is he would make sure that his artwork had a texture too. So this is the front, the kind of the corner center part of the cake. This is the bottom edge where it would touch the plate. Now we're going to come in. So right now I'm kind of outlining the cake part, not just the icing part. And then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come all the way over. Don't panic if you're not following exactly on your pencil lines. You do want to make sure that you're close, but if it's not perfect, it's okay, because we're going to go in and erase this whole thing after. So now I have the very bottom layer of cake. Okay. Next, what I'm going to come and do is I'm going to trace around the top layer of cake. So again, I'm making that wiggly line to show, hey, the icing is resting on that kind of the cake texture, and the same thing all the way across. And this space is going to be where the icing is. So now you can see I have two separate rectangles, and this. from here, I'm gonna pull this line out, and this is where my icing kind of comes up the edge of the cake. And here, I'm gonna come across here, and you can see I did add another line because this is the thickness of icing coming up from the cake. So how I know that the cake is iced at the top, and then that should just come down right there. So I've gone up. So my icing almost looks like a really weird backwards F. And then I kind of follow that line. And back around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an eraser and I'm going to erase everything because I've traced this with a Sharpie, so that won't erase. Once you have erased all of your pencil lines and you have your cake, we're going to start adding a few more details and a little bit more texture, especially in our cake, and then we're going to talk about adding color. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, if we want it to be on a plate, you can make it a circular shape, or if you just want it sitting on the table, you might add a line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make mine look like it's on a plate. So I'm going to come out, and it's actually going to be more of an oval. And I want to come behind. Now it looks kind of like it's on a plate. If you want it to be on the table, and you could even make that table under the plate, you can also just add that line farther away. So now we have the plate, the cake, and our table. If you want to add some toppings or some decorations on yours, you can. I'm going to add some sprinkles. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of texture to the cake part, and I am going to actually do that with a darker brown crayon because I'm going to have mine be kind of a vanilla, but I want it to show that it does have a texture. So you know how there's all those little holes in the cake, so I'm just making essentially little dots. I am moving my crayon a little bit so that it actually makes the mark. If you want, and you have your Sharpie, if you want to do it with Sharpie, that's fine. I just like how it looks with the brown instead of the dark black of the Sharpie. So I'm going to keep making dots to make it look nice and textured. One of the things that we are looking for with this assignment is that you are demonstrating the ability to add texture to something. Now that I have the texture done on my cake, I am going to color that in. Now, I like my cake to be the yellow cake. If you wanted your cake to be chocolate cake, what I would recommend is that maybe you make your dots with the black and then color it in brown. But I am just going to lightly color this in. I'm not going to press hard because in a little while we are actually going to be adding some other colors to this, because Wayne Thiebaud would add some really cool colors to his work to kind of give it a little bit more interest, and he would paint the shadows, but instead of just using like a black or whatever or a gray, he would use these beautiful blues to create the shadows around his objects, and it just looks really cool, and we are going to be experimenting with that a little bit today. So don't press hard as you are coloring. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about what kind of icing I want my cake to have. It's really up to you. You can pick a fun color. I would recommend that if you want to, you can have the center be a different color, but if you're going to do that, draw a line here so that it shows the difference. You can also just have it be all one color, which is what I am going to do. Normally, I really like vanilla icing, but for my artwork, I am going to color it in pink, just so that it is a little bit more interesting than just plain white. at this point I have colored in my cake, and again, I'm not adding any shadows or anything yet, so I have not pressed super firmly. I am also going to take some time and I'm going to color in my plate, my table, and my background. Then I'm going to come back and show you how to add a bit more dimension to your work. Alrighty, at this point my whole paper has been colored, and I'm going to see if I can adjust my lighting to see if you can see that just a little bit better. Because you are going to want to be able to see how I'm adding other colors. So I have done my table brown. This is a yellow green. My cake I've already colored, and then the background is a blue green. What I am going to be doing next is adding in some of that blue green color as a shadow to my work to give it a little bit more dimension. So you're going to want to watch this part and then you can apply it to your own work. So here I'm going to say it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to say my light source is kind of coming from up in here. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of that turquoise to make a shadow. I am also going to add it onto the plate. And we're going to say, you know, the shadow kind of comes this way a little bit. And I'm not trying to draw a whole oval, like I'm not coming out and drawing a big huge oval with my work. I'm kind of coloring along the edge of the object where it comes and touches the plate. Okay, so you'll see that that darkens it up. Then what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, you know, I'm thinking in my head, where is that shadow going to be? And if my light source is kind of this way, my shadow is going to come this way on my paper. So I'm just going to kind of pull that around. I also might add a little bit of a shadow line in here for where the plate kind of has a lip at the edge maybe. And you'll see that that helps it a little bit. And I would add the same thing on this side just to give that plate a little bit of dimension as well. Maybe just a tiny bit here around the outside edge. Okay, so if I hold up my paper, you'll probably be able to see it a little bit better. You can see how I added in this line here. I have colored a bit, and there is some turquoise in here. I'm also going to add some turquoise underneath where those sprinkles are so that they kind of stick up from the edge, and a little bit maybe of shadowing in here and on the cake itself too. So one of the things that I'm looking for is kind of, can you add value and shading to your work to make it look a little bit more three-dimensional? Okay, so if I zoom in, you're going to notice it a lot more. Okay, you can also go in with a violet. So if you have used blue on yours, you can go in with a violet and that's still going to add some shadow as well. Some of you might like how it looks with that a little bit more. And you can kind of play with the colors. You can use more than one color in your shadows to help darken them up a little bit. So I might add just a little bit of that violet in the yellow. And you can see right in here, right below where the cake is, I've done that. Okay, and I can add some in on the icing just to make the icing look like it's not perfectly even. And the purple is fairly close to the pink, so it makes it kind of a nice dimension to it. It gives it a nice texture. So at this point, what I want to see you doing is I would like to see you adding texture to your cake. You can also add texture to your table, and you'll notice I can just press a little bit harder and make it look more like it has that wood grain to it. And that's fairly easy to do. I also would like to see a little bit of shadow on the table. If you have drawn a plate, I should see a little bit of shadow on the table to show where that plate is coming up from in here. So I would add that, just like how I have a shadow below the slice of cake, I would have one below the plate as well. And the purple doesn't seem to show up quite as well, so I am gonna kind of go in and add with that turquoise. If you don't have a turquoise at home, just go ahead and use a blue instead. Just don't press quite so hard, because the blue would be a bit more intense than what you want. And just by adding that, see how now it makes it look like there's a shadow under here and the plate is not just flat with the table, but it is coming up from the table. So it just helps it a little bit. So I'm going to show you again. Zoom in a little bit, and you'll see how that turquoise helps the plate look a little bit more three-dimensional, and how I've added some texture to my slice of cake by adding those dots and also kind of adding the shadows. So I'm going to play with this just a little bit more because I like adding all the different colors and blending them. And you will choose what colors you think would look good. And I'm really liking how this magenta looks at the bottom of the pink. I think that looks great. I will check back in a minute when I am all done. At this point, I am going to call my work all finished, and I do want you to notice that I added a little bit of yellow up in here on the table just to brighten it up, and I added that magenta in with the pink, which I think really helps my icing look a bit more three-dimensional. So I hope that you enjoyed kind of experimenting with blending the colors a little bit and getting your work to look three-dimensional as well. I can't wait to see what you make, and I will see you all next time. Bye everyone!